Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. When benching, I've noticed that when I rack the bar, it's always 1 to 1.5 inches to the right of center. I've always recentered the bar before the next set, but never wondered why. Is this an indication of an imbalance somewhere? Is there an impending injury that is signaling? No, this happens to a lot of us. We could argue that you might need to get a little bit tighter. You might need to get your lats a little bit stronger, but it could also indicate, some asymmetry in your structure, right? Your lifting itself might look good. It might look balanced. And people always said when I was doing the wider grip benching, they would say, "Oh man, your bench technique is so clean when you do that." A lot of people would comment on that. I would still have this happen. And yeah, I tend to re-rack over to the right. It happens to me. But, again, I also have, damage on the left side with the bicep, scar tissue in there. My lockout might not be completely even. And plus, remember, when we're re-racking, we're not always in the same position that we come up in. A lot of times we end up rolling our shoulders forward a little bit, and one side will come up more than the other when we go to rack. Right, and we all have one side that's slightly stronger than the other anyways. Okay, so I wouldn't worry about it a great deal. What we're concerned with is when you video it, and you need to video it, are you locking out uneven? Do you have one side of the bar that dips more than the other? Now that can indicate a strength imbalance, and oftentimes it can indicate weak lats. Right, oftentimes it can indicate weak lats because you're not pulling in tight enough equally on both sides. Okay, so that could be something that you could address in terms of muscle balance if it's locking out uneven. But the re-racking, I think that's perfectly normal because especially when we get right into that re-rack position and we swing it back up, any asymmetry in our structure is going to come out there. And you need to remember, all humans have one arm longer than the other. We all have one leg longer than the other, and so on. We are not symmetrical. Right, we're not symmetrical, and you'll see that come out on the re-rack definitely. All right, next question. Hey Jason, one of my calves is much bigger and stronger than the other. I've recently started to train for weightlifting and think this could be a potential weak point. When doing calf raises, I feel a sharp pain in the ankle on the weak side, and it's somewhat difficult to contract the muscle. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but I broke the same foot when I was a teenager. Yeah, no, I'm going to say that probably is relevant, right? That probably is relevant, especially if everything didn't heal perfectly. In other words, it's not all lined back up perfectly. Then there could be a structural issue involved here. Could be a structural issue involved here. And here's the other thing. If you get sharp pain when doing calf raises and it's in the ankle, I think maybe you need to quit doing calf raises. Quit doing calf raises. There are other ways we can get our calves bigger. Lots of squatting. Go drag a sled. Your calves will blow up when you sled drag. You don't have to do calf raises. Because if they're causing you pain and it's a sharp pain in the ankle, and you have a previous history in that ankle of having broken the foot, I'm going to look at that and say, hey, there could be a structural issue that's limiting your ability to do calf raises, right? There could, and again, it could be the way that ligaments and everything are pulled into line because maybe the bone wasn't set correctly back in that foot, right? You could have a doctor look at it. It wouldn't be a bad idea. It wouldn't be a bad idea either if you want to have a medical professional look at it. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Stop worrying about training your calves in this way. Because if you're getting that sharp pain in your ankle doing it and it's consistent, that's your body letting you know there's a problem here. It's one thing to have a burn, it's another to have a sharp pain. And you already know that the weaker calf is smaller. And you probably have some range of motion limitations in that joint that's contributing. So here's what I'm going to say. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about trying to train it directly in that manner. And here's the thing. I'm going to ask you, you're talking about training for weightlifting. Do you have the dorsiflexion to do weightlifting? Right? Do you have the dorsiflexion to drop into those full squats for the clean and everything? And if you don't, and you're having this issue here, you might structurally be limited. And you know what? We have to accept those things. right? We have to accept those things. We are not all built for every sport, and we have previous injuries and issues that do not allow for it. So assess that. But I mean, if you can drop into those positions pain-free, I'm going to say don't worry about it, and don't worry about training your calves. It's really not a big deal. Not a big deal. I mean, like I said, if you want them to get bigger, squatting will help. Dragging a sled, they're viable alternatives. But that one side may be smaller forever, and it may be due to again, limited range of motion, right? Due to a previous injury contributing. All right, next question. What is the recommended training protocol, i.e. steps, reps, frequency, to obtain a 2-plate strict press? I'm currently on 185 pounds through using linear progression, but would like to hear your input on training to a 225 press as quickly as possible. All right, well, the fact that just using a linear progression you've got to a 185 is very impressive. Right, that's pretty impressive. That's relatively rare for that type of training. So good work there. You've done good. Just keep in mind that that is abnormal. You're ahead of the curve on that. So here's the thing that we need to look at. You're running linear progression. It means you're probably still somewhat novice. You don't know a lot about training systems. I'm going to tell you right now, there is no one set reps and frequency that you will use to get to a lift like that, unless you were just really, really gifted at that lift genetically, or you're willing to bulk up and get really fat. Right? No one trains like that. No one at the elite levels trains like that. And when you're talking about a 225 strict press, that is a hard number to reach, particularly for a drug-free lifter. And people say, well, I know guys who've done it. Well, yeah, I know guys who've done it too. But it's pretty unusual. In other words, getting to a 315 bench is easier. Okay? I don't know anyone with a 225 strict press who only benches 315. I've been the closest person you guys have seen in that regard. I don't have any clients who are at that strength level on the bench who can press 225. I rarely see guys who bench less than 350 doing that. So things to remember there. This is a pretty lofty goal. Pretty lofty goal. Remember how long it took Alpha Destiny to get there? Remember, everyone, and we'll leave it alone because we get along with the fake footage where we know he didn't do it, and then finally, years and years later, he finally got it recently. How many years he dedicated to that? This is a lofty goal. Okay. My lifters who tell me that they want a big overhead press, we program it into their conjugate. Well, what does that mean? That means we do maxes on it. We do maxes on variations of the overhead press. We do rep work on the overhead press, and we rotate in blocks of speed work. Sometimes speed work against bands or chains in place of the benching. So something like 9 sets of 3 against bands or chains for speed. Right? So you're going to have to use multiple rep ranges, and you may need to press twice a week. If that's a serious goal for you, you probably are going to need to do the press twice a week, and you're going to need to look at supplemental work for it. I highly recommend closed grip benching, possibly dips, maybe additional shoulder work, right? Do some snatch grip high pulls or lateral raises. You're going to need supplemental lifts to help you get there too. Because 225 press is a pretty serious goal, and you probably think, well, I got to 185 pretty quick. Yeah, but that next 40 pounds is not going to be easy. You're going to need to actually program for it. It's not going to be, hey, how many sets, reps, and frequency. That's not going to work. That doesn't work at that point in the game for lifts like that, unless you were just extremely genetically gifted at it. You're going to need to gear your whole training system around it. And I just gave you an example of what my guys do who tell me, hey, I want a 225 press, because I've shown one of my guys do it who's 200 pounds. It's a very good lift at that body weight. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.